The phone buzzed against the hardwood of the coffee table. It was a short, sharp vibration, the kind that usually signals a spam email or a weather alert. But my stomach dropped before I even looked at the screen. My body knew. It was that conditioned reflex, built over 3 decades of walking on eggshells, that told me exactly who was calling before my eyes confirmed it. I picked up the phone. It wasn't a call, it was a notification from WhatsApp. The group chat was ironically named Family Harmony, a title my mother, Deidre, had bestowed upon it 5 years ago in a desperate attempt to manifest a reality that didn't exist. "Mom added you to the group," the screen read. I stared at it. I had left that group chat 8 months ago. Silence had been my sanctuary. My husband, Julian, was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for our Tuesday night stir-fry. The rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the knife against the cutting board usually soothed me, but right now, the sound felt like a countdown. Another buzz. A message from Deidre. Christmas Eve. 6 p.m. sharp. "Your father is feeling much better and we want everyone together. No excuses this year, Tessa. Big news coming." Then, a flurry of emojis followed from my sister, Bianca. Champagne bottles. House icons. Party poppers. And then a link to a Zillow listing for a massive property out by Lake Clearwater. I felt the air thin in the room. My chest tightened. I knew this rumor. Bianca had been dropping hints on her Instagram stories for weeks, posting vague photos of lake views with captions like "manifesting my dream life" and "Daddy's girl gets what she wants." The listing price was right there on the preview, $550,000. "Tessa?" Julian's voice broke through the fog. He was standing in the doorway, a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. He looked at my pale face, then at the phone in my hand. He didn't need to ask. "They reached out?" "Mom re-added me to the chat," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I wanted it to be. "They want us there for Christmas Eve. Bianca is posting houses again." Julian sighed, walking over to sit beside me on our worn-out beige sofa. It wasn't a fancy sofa, we had bought it second-hand when we moved into this apartment, but it was comfortable, and most importantly, it was ours. He took the phone from my hand and set it face down. "You don't have to go," he said firmly. "We have our own traditions now. We can order Chinese food, watch bad movies, and drink cheap wine. We don't need the drama, Tessa." I leaned my head on his shoulder. He smelled like garlic and cedarwood soap. "I know," I whispered. "But if I don't go, I'm the villain. I'm the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her parents after her father's health scare. They've already spun that narrative to the extended family." "Let them spin it," Julian said, his jaw tightening. "They're going to paint you as the villain whether you show up or not. At least if you stay home, you're a peaceful villain." He was right. Logically, I knew he was right. But guilt is a powerful programming language, and my mother was a master coder. If I didn't go, the narrative would be that Tessa is cold, Tessa is heartless, Tessa doesn't care that her father almost died. But if I went, I knew exactly what awaited me. The grandstanding. The subtle digs at my nursing career. The worship of Bianca. And this year, the stakes seemed higher. That house listing. $550,000. It was an obscene amount of money for my parents to spend, especially after Dad's retirement. But for Bianca? The rules of economics didn't apply to Bianca. "I need to go," I said, sitting up straight. Not to make peace. But because I feel like something is going to happen. Dad has been weirdly quiet. He hasn't sent a single flying monkey message in months. Julian looked at me, searching my eyes. "You think this is it? The grand finale?" "Maybe," I said. Bianca is 35. She's still renting a condo Dad pays for. Her husband, Grant, has been between jobs for 2 years. If they buy her this lake house, that's it. That's the seal on the deal. I just want to see it. I want to see them handed to her so I can finally, truly, let go of the last shred of hope that they might ever be fair. Julian took my hand and squeezed it. Okay. We go. But we take 2 cars. The second you give the signal, we leave. No goodbyes, no politeness. We just walk. Deal, I said. I picked up the phone again. I didn't type a long explanation. I didn't use emojis. I just typed 2 words, we'll be there. As I hit send, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It wasn't happiness. It was the cold, hard clarity of a soldier walking back onto a battlefield they know too well. I wasn't going there to celebrate Christmas. I was going there to witness a crime scene. To understand why a simple dinner invitation felt like a summons to court, you have to understand the architecture of my family. It wasn't built on love, it was built on a spotlight. And that spotlight had only one setting, Bianca. My earliest memory of this dynamic is visceral. It smells like floor wax and stale popcorn. I was 10 years old. It was the night of the elementary school science fair. I had spent 3 months working on a model of the human heart. While other kids were making baking soda volcanoes or potato clocks, I was obsessed with valves and arteries. I had used red and blue clay, painstakingly shaping the aorta and the vena cava. I had memorized every function. I could explain systemic circulation to anyone who would listen. My teacher, Mrs. Albright, had told me earlier that day that I was a shoo-in for the blue ribbon. I was vibrating with excitement. I stood by my display board, wearing my best dress, a scratchy blue thing that Mom had bought on clearance, waiting for my parents to arrive. They were late. They were always late, but tonight I hoped it would be different. Finally, at 7:15, 45 minutes after the fair started, I saw them. Dad, Franklin, looked annoyed, checking his watch. Mom, Deidre, looked flustered. And between them, looking like a tragic princess, was 13-year-old Bianca. I waved frantically. Mom. Dad. Over here. They walked over, but their eyes weren't on my beautiful clay heart. They were on Bianca, who was clutching her stomach and whimpering. Did you see it? I asked, pointing to my project. Mrs. Albright said, Tessa, quiet down, please, Mom snapped, her voice high and tight. Your sister isn't feeling well. She thinks she ate something bad at lunch. But look at the heart, I persisted, my voice trembling slightly. I made the valves open and close. Dad glanced at the project for exactly 1 second. Very nice, Tessa. Look, Deidre, she's really pale. We should get her home. But the awards are in 20 minutes. I protested. The injustice rose in my throat like bile. I'm going to win. You have to see me win. Bianca let out a loud, theatrical moan and slumped against Dad's shoulder. My tummy hurts so bad, she whined. I think I'm going to throw up. That was the magic phrase. In the hierarchy of our house, Bianca's potential vomit ranked significantly higher than my actual success. We can't stay, Tessa, Mom said, already digging in her purse for the car keys. Pack up your things. We're leaving. No. I shouted. It was the first time I had ever raised my voice at them. I want to stay. Aunt Margot is here somewhere. I can ride home with her. Don't be selfish, Dad said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous tone that meant the discussion was over. Your sister is sick. We act as a family. We leave as a family. I saw Aunt Margot then, pushing through the crowd. She was Dad's younger sister, the black sheep of the family because she refused to dye her graying hair and lived in a van for 2 years in the 90s. What's going on? Margot asked, looking from my tear-filled eyes to Bianca's staged agony. Bianca's sick, Mom said. We're taking everyone home. Rubbish, Aunt Margot said, crossing her arms. The girl just ate 2 cotton candies in the lobby. I saw her. Tessa is about to win first prize. Leave Tessa with me. I'll bring her home. For a second, just a second, I thought I was saved. But Mom's face hardened. She hated being contradicted, especially by Margot. We are leaving. Now. Tessa, get in the car. I looked at my clay heart. I looked at the blue ribbon that Mrs. Albright was holding at the front of the room, preparing to call names. Then I looked at Bianca. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the ground, a tiny, triumphant smirk playing on her lips that only I could see. She wasn't sick. She just couldn't stand to be in a room where people were clapping for someone else. I left the project there. I walked out into the cold night air, the smell of floor wax fading into the smell of exhaust fumes. I didn't win the ribbon that night because I wasn't there to claim it. They gave it to the runner-up, a boy who made a battery out of a lemon. That car ride home was the first time I realized that truth didn't matter in our family. Performance mattered. And Bianca was the only actor allowed on stage. I was just the stagehand, expected to work in the dark and keep my mouth shut. As I grew older, I learned that the safest way to exist in my house was to be low maintenance. If I didn't need anything, money, attention, praise, I couldn't be disappointed when I didn't get it. While Bianca spent her teenage years accumulating expensive hobbies she would abandon a month later, horseback riding, cello, competitive cheerleading, I focused on school. I became invisible. I studied in the library because it was quiet. I ate dinner quickly so I could excuse myself while Bianca held court at the table, recounting her daily dramas with friends or boys. When it came time for college, the divide became a canyon. Bianca barely graduated high school. Her GPA was a disaster, salvaged only by Mom begging the teachers for extra credit opportunities and Dad making donations to the school's booster club. But when she got accepted into a mediocre private college to study public relations, a major she chose because she thought it meant going to parties, my parents threw a gala. Literally. They rented a tent in the backyard, hired a caterer, and toasted to Bianca's brilliance. I graduated valedictorian of my class 2 years later. That's nice, honey, Mom said when I showed her my acceptance letter to the state university's nursing program. She didn't look up from her iPad. She was busy looking at apartment listings for Bianca, who had decided the dorms were too triggering for her anxiety. I got a partial scholarship, I added, hoping that saving them money would spark some reaction. Good, Dad said from behind his newspaper. College is expensive. We're already stretching it with Bianca's rent and her incidentals. Incidentals. That was the family code word for Bianca's credit card bills. I went to nursing school not just because I loved science, but because nursing is a profession of service. It's about observation. It's about putting someone else's needs before your own. I had been training for it my entire life. I was excellent at it. During those 4 years, I worked double shifts as a waitress to cover the rest of my tuition. I drove a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when it went over 40 miles per hour. I bought my clothes at thrift stores. Meanwhile, Bianca dropped out of PR, switched to art history, dropped out of that, and then decided to become a lifestyle consultant, whatever that meant. She never held a job for more than 3 months. Every time she quit or got fired, there was a family crisis. Bianca was too sensitive for the corporate world. Bianca was creatively stifled. And every time, the checkbook opened. A new car to cheer her up. A trip to Cabo to help her find herself. I watched all of this from a distance. I was the audience member in the cheap seats, watching a play where the protagonist was a villain and the critics, my parents, were giving it a standing ovation. But the real shift happened when I met Julian. He was an engineering student I met in the hospital cafeteria. He was visiting his grandmother, I was on my break. He was calm, steady, and logical. He was the first person who looked at me and didn't look through me. Your family is weird, he told me 3 months into dating. We were sitting in his dorm room, and I was crying because Mom had forgotten my birthday again but had called to ask if I could loan Bianca $200 for concert tickets. They love me, I defended automatically. They're just busy with Bianca. She needs more help. No, Tessa, Julian said, taking my hands. They're not busy. They're addicted. She's the drug, and they're the junkies. And you? You're the one they blame when they run out of supply. I didn't want to believe him then. But looking back, that was the moment the crack in the foundation started. It was the first time someone validated my reality. It was the first time I realized that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the ungrateful daughter. Maybe I was just the daughter who had woken up. If childhood was a dress rehearsal for my family's dysfunction, adulthood was opening night. And nothing showcased the disparity between my sister and me quite like our weddings. Bianca got married first, of course. She met Grant at a gallery opening. Grant was nice enough, the son of a successful real estate developer, but he had the personality of a wet napkin. He was perfect for Bianca because he didn't take up any space. He was an accessory, like a designer handbag that nodded in agreement. Their wedding cost $100,000. My parents took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for it. It's an investment, Dad had argued when I questioned the logic of spending that much on a single day. Grant comes from a good family. We need to match their level. For 6 months, I wasn't just the maid of honor, I was the unpaid wedding planner, therapist, and punching bag. I addressed 500 invitations by hand because Bianca said my handwriting was more authentic than a printer. I spent weekends gluing Swarovski crystals onto table numbers until my fingers bled. On the day of the wedding, Bianca had a meltdown because the hydrangeas were the wrong shade of periwinkle. She threw a vase across the bridal suite. It shattered inches from my feet. "Fix it, Tessa," she screamed, her face contorted with rage that didn't match her angelic makeup. "If my day is ruined, I will never forgive you." I fixed it. I always fixed it. I called the florist, begged, pleaded, and drove to 3 different wholesalers in a frenzy. When I walked down the aisle ahead of her, sweating under my dress, Mom whispered, "Smile, Tessa. You look miserable. Don't spoil your sister's moment." 2 years later, it was my turn. Julian and I wanted something small. We were drowning in student loans and saving for a down payment on a house. We planned a backyard ceremony at Julian's aunt's house. Total budget, $5,000. "Oh," Mom said when I showed her the plan. "A backyard? Are you sure? It's a bit rustic. What will Grant's parents think?" "I don't care what Grant's parents think," I said. "It's about us." My parents contributed nothing financially. "We're still recovering from Bianca's wedding," Dad said, not meeting my eyes. "The market has been tough." I didn't argue. I expected it. But I did expect them to be present. Physically and emotionally. The ceremony was set for 4 o'clock. At 3:50, my parents arrived, looking frazzled. "Where is Bianca?" I asked, adjusting my veil. "She's running a little late," Mom said, checking her phone. "She had a wardrobe crisis. You know how she is." I waited. 4 o'clock came and went. The guests were seated. The sun was starting to dip lower. Julian looked at me, his eyes asking the question, "Do we wait?" "Let's start," I whispered. "She can join when she gets here." We were halfway through our vows when a car door slammed. The gate creaked open. And there was Bianca. A collective gasp rippled through the 30 guests. Bianca wasn't wearing the navy blue dress I had asked her to wear. She was wearing a floor-length gown in a shade that was technically champagne, but under the sunlight, it was indistinguishable from white. It was backless, beaded, and frankly, more expensive than my bridal gown. She tiptoed down the aisle, waving apologetically, making sure every eye shifted from me to her. She sat in the front row, right next to Mom, and loudly whispered, "So sorry." The traffic was a nightmare. I stumbled over my vows. The magic bubble was popped. Julian squeezed my hand so hard his knuckles turned white. But the real show was reserved for the reception. During the toasts, my best friend, Sarah, gave a heartfelt speech about how hard I worked and how perfect Julian was for me. It was lovely. Then, Bianca stood up. She tapped her glass with a fork, demanding silence. I didn't prepare a speech, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. Because honestly, today has been so emotional for me. She paused for effect. The room went silent. As I watched my baby sister get married, she continued, placing a hand on her flat stomach, I realize how precious family is. And I haven't told anyone yet, not even mom and dad. My heart stopped. I looked at Julian. He looked like he was about to flip the table. But Grant and I have been trying for a while, she said, tears glistening in her eyes. And I've been feeling so nauseous all week. I think there might be a little +1 here with us today. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Mom shrieked and jumped up to hug her. Dad started clapping. Grant looked confused but smiled awkwardly. The guests, caught up in the moment, started cheering. My wedding toast turned into Bianca's pregnancy announcement. I sat there, frozen, a piece of dry chicken in my mouth that I couldn't swallow. No one was looking at me. No one was looking at the groom. They were swarming Bianca, touching her stomach, asking about due dates. Julian stood up. He walked over to the DJ, his cousin with a laptop, and cut the music. Excuse me, Julian's voice boomed over the microphone. It was the first time I had ever heard him yell. This is Tessa's wedding. If you want to talk about babies, you can do it in the parking lot. Sit down. The room went dead silent. Mom looked at Julian with pure hatred. Bianca looked shocked, then immediately crumpled into tears, burying her face in Grant's shoulder. He's so mean, I heard her sob. I was just sharing joy. That night, my parents left early. They had to take Bianca home because she was too emotionally fragile after being yelled at. They left me at my own wedding to comfort the person who hijacked it. The irony, of course, was that Bianca wasn't pregnant. 2 days later, she got her period. Chemical pregnancy, she told everyone. It happens when you're under too much stress. The implication was clear, Julian's shouting had caused it. For the next 3 years, my family home transformed into what I called the fertility shrine. Bianca's struggle to conceive became the center of the universe. I'm not dismissing infertility, I'm a nurse, I know how devastating it is. But with Bianca, it wasn't just a medical struggle, it was a stage performance. Every Sunday dinner followed the same script. We would arrive, and the mood would be dictated by Bianca's cycle. If she was ovulating, the house was full of optimism. Mom would have lit fertility candles that smelled like sage and desperation. We had to eat foods that were womb-friendly, lots of yams and leafy greens, even though Dad hated yams. If she had just gotten a negative test, the house was a funeral parlor. The curtains were drawn. We had to speak in hushed tones. How are things at the hospital? Dad asked me once during one of these dinners. Actually, really good, I said, eager to change the subject. I just got promoted to head nurse of the surgical wing. It comes with a raise and Mom kicked me under the table. Hard. I looked at her, startled. She widened her eyes and tilted her head toward Bianca, who was pushing peas around her plate with a tragic expression. That's nice, dear, Mom said, her voice tight. But maybe let's not talk about success right now. Bianca is having a hard week. I swallowed my words. I swallowed my pride. My promotion, something I had worked 60-hour weeks for, was an insult to Bianca's suffering. Meanwhile, Julian and I were fighting our own battles. We were broke. The student loans were crushing us. We were living in a one-bedroom apartment with faulty heating, trying to save every penny for a house. We never asked my parents for money. We knew the answer. The bank of Mom and Dad was exclusively funding Bianca's IVF treatments, her acupuncturist, her spiritual retreats to Sedona, and her therapy. We just want grandbabies, Mom would say, defending the thousands of dollars they poured into Bianca. "It's our legacy. We could have a baby," Julian whispered to me one night as we drove home from another miserable dinner. "We're ready." "We can't afford it," I said, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "And honestly? I'm terrified." "Terrified of what?" "Terrified that if I have a baby, they won't care. Or worse, they'll be angry." I was right to be terrified. The dynamic had solidified into concrete. Bianca was the fragile glass vase that needed to be protected at all costs. I was the rubber ball. You could throw me against the wall, kick me, ignore me, and I would just bounce back. I was strong, so I didn't need love. I was competent, so I didn't need support. One evening in November, I went to my parents' house to drop off some paperwork for Dad's insurance. I handled all their medical admin because Bianca couldn't deal with forms. I walked into the living room and found them looking at brochures for luxury SUVs. "Are you getting a new car?" I asked, surprised. Dad's truck was only 2 years old. "It's for Bianca," Dad said, looking a bit sheepish. "The IVF hormones are making her very sensitive to vibrations. Her current car is too bumpy. It's stressing her out. The doctor said she needs a smooth ride." "A smooth ride?" I repeated, looking at the price tag circled on the brochure. $70,000. "Dad, my car broke down last week. I've been taking the bus to the hospital for 3 days." "Oh, Tessa, you're so resilient," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. "You always figure it out. Besides, the bus is good for the environment. Bianca needs this. It's for the baby. The baby that didn't exist yet." I looked at them, my graying father, my anxious mother, and I realized they weren't just enabling her. They were hostages. They were terrified of her moods, her tantrums, her weaponized sadness. Buying her things was the only way they knew to keep the peace. "Right," I said, putting the insurance papers on the table. "I'll figure it out." Like always. I walked back to the bus stop in the rain. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was starting to feel something else, something colder and sharper. I was starting to feel done. But I didn't know that the final blow was just around the corner. The thing that would sever the cord wasn't money, or cars, or weddings. It was life itself. The 2 pink lines on the plastic stick didn't bring me immediate joy. They brought me terror. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the test until my vision blurred. I was pregnant. After years of financial struggle and deferring our dreams, it had happened naturally, quietly, without candles or charts. When I showed Julian, he wept. He held me in the hallway of our apartment, burying his face in my neck. "We're going to be parents," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We're going to do it right, Tessa. Not like them. We're going to be different." But then came the shadow. "When do we tell them?" he asked, pulling back to look at me. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. "Not yet," I said quickly. "Not until we're safe. Not until I can't hide it anymore." I hid it for 5 months. I wore baggy scrubs to work. I wore oversized sweaters to the few family dinners we attended. I drank cranberry juice in wine glasses to fake it. I was terrified that if I spoke the words aloud in that house, Bianca's envy would somehow reach out and curdle the life growing inside me. It was irrational, I know. I'm a nurse, I believe in science. But growing up with Bianca felt like living in a grim fairy tale where she was the witch who could blight crops with a look. But by 20 weeks, I couldn't hide it. I was showing. We decided to tell them at Mom's birthday dinner. It felt like neutral ground. Maybe, just maybe, because it was Mom's day, Bianca would be on her best behavior. We were wrong. The dinner was roast chicken and tense conversation. Bianca was complaining about her new yoga instructor. When the cake was served, I took a deep breath. Julian reached under the table and squeezed my knee. "Mom, Dad," I started, my voice shaking slightly. We have a gift for you. It's a grandchild. I pulled the ultrasound picture from my purse and slid it onto the table. For 3 seconds, there was silence. Mom picked up the photo, her mouth opening in a perfect O. Dad smiled, a genuine, surprised smile. "Tessa!" Dad exclaimed. "My God, really?" Then, a chair scraped violently against the floor. Bianca stood up. Her face wasn't happy. It wasn't even neutral. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Her skin had gone blotchy and red. "You did this on purpose," she hissed. Her voice was low, trembling with a fury that scared me. "Bianca, what?" I asked, bewildered. "You knew," she screamed, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You knew I just started a new IVF cycle yesterday. You knew how fragile I am. And you come here, with your belly, and you rub it in my face." "Bianca, I didn't plan my pregnancy around your cycle," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "We've been hiding it for 5 months to protect you." "Protect me?" She laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. "You hid it so you could ambush me. You wanted to humiliate me. You want everyone to look at you and pity poor, barren Bianca." She grabbed her wine glass and threw it. Not at me, but at the wall. Red wine splashed across Mom's cream wallpaper like blood. "I can't be here," she shrieked. "She's toxic. She's trying to kill me." She ran out of the room, sobbing loudly. And then, the predictable pivot happened. Mom didn't look at the ultrasound anymore. She didn't hug me. She looked at the door where Bianca had vanished. "Tessa," Mom said, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Why did you have to do it like that? You know how sensitive she is." I just wanted to tell you," I stammered. "You should have emailed us," Dad muttered, standing up to go after Bianca. "You shouldn't have sprung it on her. God, Tessa, sometimes you are so thoughtless." They left the table. They left Julian and me alone with the ultrasound picture and the dripping wine. We left without saying goodbye. In the car, I started to cramp. It wasn't bad at first. Just a dull ache. I thought it was stress. I told myself it was just the adrenaline crash. But a week later, I was at work when the pain brought me to my knees. It felt like something was tearing inside me. I collapsed in the hallway of the surgical wing. The last thing I saw was the fluorescent lights spinning above me and the terrified face of my colleague, Dr. Evans. I woke up in a recovery room. The emptiness inside me was physical. It was a hollow, echoing space where a heartbeat used to be. "I'm so sorry, Tessa," the doctor said. "It was a placental abruption. It happened too fast." I didn't cry. I couldn't. I felt like I had been turned to stone. I had lost my baby. And in the dark corners of my mind, a terrible thought took root: Bianca's wish came true. The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beep of the monitor and the hum of the air conditioning. Julian was asleep in the uncomfortable plastic chair next to my bed, his hand still holding mine. He looked aged, lines of grief etched into his face that hadn't been there yesterday. I had been in the hospital for 24 hours. My phone sat on the bedside table. It was silent. I knew Julian had called them. I had heard him in the hallway, his voice thick with tears, telling Dad what happened. "She lost the baby, Franklin. It's bad. You need to come." I watched the door, waiting. I was 30 years old, a grown woman, a nurse who dealt with death daily, but in that moment, I just wanted my mother. I wanted her to come in, brush my hair back, and tell me that the world hadn't ended. Morning turned into afternoon. The nurse came in to check my vitals. She looked at the empty room, then at me, with a pity that burned. "Still no visitors, hon?" she asked gently. "My husband is here," I said defensively. "Of course." She adjusted my "Let me know if you need anything." At 4 p.m., my phone finally rang. It was Mom. I fumbled to answer it, a surge of relief washing over me. They were probably just parking. They were late, but they were coming. Mom? I rasped, my throat dry from the anesthesia. Oh, Tessa, Mom's voice sounded exhausted. But not the exhaustion of grief. It was the exhaustion of managing a crisis. How are you feeling? I lost the baby, Mom, I said, tears finally starting to prick my eyes. It hurts. Everything hurts. I know, honey, I know, she sighed. We wanted to come. We were getting ready to leave. Where are you? I asked. We're still at home, she said. I froze. Home? But Julian called you this morning. I know, Mom said, and her voice dropped to a whisper, as if she didn't want to be overheard. But Bianca took the news really hard, Tessa. I blinked, trying to process the sentence. Bianca took my miscarriage hard? She feels incredibly guilty, Mom explained, as if this made perfect sense. She thinks her anger last week caused bad energy. She's been having panic attacks all day. She can't stop crying. She's threatening to hurt herself, Tessa. We can't leave her alone. So bring her, I said, my voice hardening. Or leave her with Grant. I'm in the hospital, Mom. I need you. We can't ask Grant to handle this, he's useless with her panic attacks, Mom said, sounding impatient now. Look, Dad is trying to calm her down. We can't leave right now. It wouldn't be safe for her. Silence stretched between us. A cold, absolute silence. Then Mom said the sentence that would end our relationship. She said it softly, almost gently, like she was offering me a wisdom I was too young to understand. And honestly, Tessa, maybe it's for the best. The air left the room. What did you say? I mean, with Bianca struggling so much, she continued, oblivious to the knife she was twisting in my heart. It would have been very difficult for the family dynamic if you had a baby right now. It would have created so much distance. Maybe this is nature's way of keeping the peace. You can try again later, when your sister is in a better place. I looked at the phone. I looked at Julian, who had woken up and was watching me, his eyes wide with horror as he heard Mom's voice leaking from the speaker. Nature's way of keeping the peace. My dead child was a peace offering to Bianca's ego. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a lock clicking into place. The door to my heart, which had been left ajar for them for 30 years, slammed shut and bolted. Tessa? Are you there? Mom asked. I'm here, I said. My voice was steady. It didn't sound like my voice anymore. It sounded like a stranger's. Don't come. What? Don't come to the hospital, I said. Don't come to my house. Don't call me. Go take care of Bianca. She needs you. I don't. Tessa, don't be dramatic, Mom snapped. We're doing the best we can in a terrible situation. So am I said. I pressed the red button. Then I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Mom and hit block caller. I did the same for Dad. I did the same for Bianca. I put the phone down on the table. Julian was crying silently. He reached out and pulled me into his arms. I'm so sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. It's okay, I whispered, staring at the white wall opposite me. I'm an orphan now, Julian. It's just us. And for the first time in my life, that didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like survival. The first month of silence felt like withdrawal. I kept checking my phone, expecting the guilt-tripping texts, the late-night calls demanding I fix something. Every time the phone buzzed, my heart rate spiked. But slowly, the spikes leveled out. I started seeing Dr. Sutton, a therapist with kind eyes and a brutally honest approach. She was the one who introduced me to the terminology that decoded my life. "You're not crazy, Tessa," she told me during our third session. "And you're not a bad daughter. You are the scapegoat. Bianca is the golden child. Your parents are the enablers. It's a system. A closed loop. And you just stepped out of it." "But I abandoned them," I said, twisting a tissue in my hands. "My mom said, your mom is trying to pull you back into your role," Dr. Sutton interrupted gently. "Imagine a mobile hanging from the ceiling. You cut one string, and the whole thing spins out of balance. They are spinning right now. They want you back, not to love you, but to stabilize the mobile." That metaphor changed everything. I wasn't being punished, I was simply refusing to be the counterweight for Bianca's chaos. For the first time in 10 years, Julian and I had a holiday season to ourselves. Thanksgiving was just the two of us. We made a small turkey, drank expensive wine, and watched a marathon of sci-fi movies. There was no screaming. No one commented on my weight or my job. No one cried because the stuffing was too dry. "Is this what normal people do?" I asked Julian as we sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. "I think so," he smiled, kissing my forehead. "I like it." I liked it too. I started to sleep through the night. My skin cleared up. I got another commendation at work. Without the constant drain of my family's drama, I had energy. I started gardening on our small balcony, planting herbs and tomatoes. I was nurturing things that actually grew, instead of pouring water into a cracked vase. But the silence from the other side wasn't empty. It was heavy. Through the grapevine of distant cousins and social media, which I checked exclusively from a burner account I swore I wouldn't use but did anyway, I saw the cracks forming. Bianca was posting manic updates. "Why is everyone so toxic? Can't trust anyone but yourself." Without me there to absorb her anxiety, she was spiraling. And without me there to fix things, my parents were finally feeling the full weight of her needs. I thought I was done with them. I thought the cord was cut forever. But life has a way of forcing paths to cross one last time. It happened on a Tuesday in September. 6 months after the miscarriage. 6 months of silence. My phone rang at 2 a.m. It wasn't Mom. It wasn't Dad. It was Bianca. I stared at the screen. My rule was no contact. But a call at 2 a.m. from a family member usually means only one thing. The nurse in me overrode the daughter in me. I picked up. "What?" "He's making a noise." Bianca screamed. She was hysterical, her voice so high it distorted the speaker. "Tessa. He's making a weird noise and he fell." "Who?" I asked, sitting up instantly. Julian shifted beside me, waking up. "Daddy." We were watching a movie and he just grabbed his chest and fell. "Is he breathing?" I switched into clinical mode. My voice became a flat line of command. "I don't know. He's making a gurgling sound. It's gross." "Oh my God, Tessa, come over here. You have to come fix him." "Bianca, listen to me," I commanded. "I am 40 minutes away. You need to call 911. Now." "I can't," she wailed. "My phone is on 1%. And I look terrible, I can't deal with the police." "Call 911 on the landline." I shouted. "Is Mom there?" "Mom took a sleeping pill. She won't wake up." "Tessa, help me." "Put the phone on speaker," I ordered. "Put it next to Dad." "Do it now, Bianca." I heard a rustle, and then the sound of labored, wet breathing. It was a sound I knew well. Agonal breathing. He was dying. "Dad?" I called out, my voice loud and clear through the speakerphone. "Dad, can you hear me?" No answer. Just that terrifying gurgle. "Bianca, is the front door unlocked?" I asked. "No, it's locked. We always lock it." Unlock it, I said. Go unlock it so the paramedics can get in. I can't leave him, she sobbed. What if he dies while I'm walking to the door? He will die if you don't unlock the door. I screamed. Go. Run. I heard her footsteps retreating. I grabbed Julian's phone and dialed 911 with my other hand, giving the dispatcher my parents' address while keeping Bianca on the line. Bianca, are you back? I unlocked it, she panted. Okay. You need to do compressions. Do you remember CPR? No. I can't touch him, Tessa. He looks blue. It's scary. Bianca, put your hands in the center of his chest. Push hard and fast. To the beat of Stayin' Alive. Do it. I can't. She was hyperventilating now. I'm going to pass out. I can't breathe. Why aren't you here? This is your fault. You're the nurse. I am not there because you people drove me away. I snapped, losing my cool for a fraction of a second before reeling it back in. Okay, if you won't touch him, just stay on the line. The ambulance is 2 minutes away. Do not hang up. For the next 120 seconds, I listened to my father fighting for air while my sister cried about how traumatized she was. This is going to ruin my week, she whined between sobs. I have a facial tomorrow. I can't believe this is happening to me. I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. My father was dying on the floor, and Bianca was worried about her facial. Then, I heard a gasp. A deep, shuddering intake of air from the floor. Dad? I said. Dad, squeeze Bianca's hand if you can hear me. His hand is clammy, Bianca said. Tessa? It was a whisper. A ragged, weak whisper. It was Dad. I'm here, Dad, I said, my voice softening. I'm on the phone. The ambulance is pulling up. I called them. You're going to be okay. Bianca. He wheezed. She's there, I said. My chest. I know. Help is there. Just breathe. Then I heard the heavy boots of the paramedics entering the house. Ma'am, step aside, a male voice boomed. Oh, thank God, Bianca cried. Please don't use the siren when you leave, the neighbors will hate us. I stayed on the line as they worked on him. I gave the paramedic my credentials and Dad's medical history over the speakerphone. I told them about his hypertension meds, his allergy to penicillin. I was the ghost in the machine, orchestrating his survival from 20 miles away. When they loaded him onto the stretcher, the paramedic picked up the phone. You the daughter? He asked. Yes, I said. I'll meet you at Mercy General. Good job, he said. He's stable. You probably saved him. I hung up. I was shaking. Julian wrapped a blanket around me. Are we going? He asked. I have to, I said. I have to make sure he survives. But Julian. I'm not going as his daughter. I'm going as his advocate. Once he's out of the woods, we leave. We drove to the hospital in silence. When we arrived, Bianca was in the waiting room, scrolling on her phone. She looked perfectly put together, not a hair out of place. She must have fixed her makeup before the ambulance arrived. Is he okay? I asked. They took him back, she said, not looking up. Mom is on her way. God, that was exhausted. I need a coffee. Can you get me a latte? I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt disgust. Pure, clinical disgust. Get your own coffee, Bianca, I said. I walked past her and went to the nurse's station. I flashed my badge. They let me back. Dad was awake. He was hooked up to monitors, looking pale and small. Hi Dad, I said, standing at the foot of the bed. He opened his eyes. He looked at me. Then he looked at the door. Where is she? He rasped. Bianca is in the waiting room, I said. Mom is coming. He closed his eyes. A single tear leaked out. I heard you, he whispered. On the phone. I heard what you said. And I heard what she said. Rest, Dad, I said. She wouldn't touch me, he said, his voice trembling. She was worried about the neighbors. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The truth was finally sitting in the room with us, ugly and undeniable. Thank you, he said. You're welcome, I said. I'm glad you're okay. I stayed until Mom arrived. When she burst in, weeping theatrically, I squeezed Dad's foot and walked out. I didn't wait for her to notice me. I didn't wait for Bianca to finish her coffee. I had done my duty. In the weeks following the heart attack, the silence shifted. It wasn't just me ignoring them anymore. It was them trying to breach the wall. First came the flowers. A massive bouquet of white lilies arrived at my apartment. The card read, "Thank you for everything. Love, Mom and Dad." I threw them in the dumpster. Lilies are toxic to cats, and although I didn't have a cat, the symbolism felt appropriate. Then came the text messages. From Mom, Dad is home. He's asking about you. Please call. From Dad, Tessa. We need to talk. From Bianca, stop being a brat. Mom is stressed because you're ghosting us. Grow up. I didn't reply to any of them. I knew the cycle. This was the hoovering phase, trying to suck the victim back in with crumbs of affection or guilt. But then, something unexpected happened. I was sitting in a coffee shop near my hospital, reviewing charts, when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up, expecting to see a waiter. It was Aunt Margot. She looked exactly as she had 20 years ago, wild gray hair, a tie-dye scarf, and eyes that saw too much. She sat down without asking. You're hard to find, she said, placing a distinctively large purse on the table. I'm hiding, I said, closing my laptop. Did they send you? Huh. Margot laughed, a bark of a sound. Deidre wouldn't send me to buy milk. She thinks I'm a bad influence. No, I came on my own. She leaned in, lowering her voice. I visited your father yesterday. He looks different. Not just sick. Changed. He had a heart attack, I said. That changes people. It's not that, Margot said. He fired Bianca. I blinked. What? Bianca was managing his home office. Filing papers, that sort of thing. He fired her. Told her she was incompetent and he didn't want her touching his files anymore. My jaw dropped. That job was a charity position Dad had invented to give Bianca an allowance without calling it an allowance. And, Margot continued, her eyes twinkling, he's selling the business. The landscaping firm. He got an offer from a national chain. A big offer. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because he's reorganizing the trust, Tessa, Margot said seriously. He asked me for your address. He asked me for the name of your bank. He wouldn't tell Deidre why. I don't want his money, I said immediately. I just want to be left alone. Don't be an idiot, Margot snapped, but affectionately. It's not about the money. It's about the ledger. Your father is a bookkeeper at heart. He realized the books have been unbalanced for 30 years. He wants to balance them before he dies. She reached across the table and patted my hand. Her skin was rough, calloused from gardening. He heard you that night, Margot said softly. He told me. He said he was lying on the floor, dying, and he realized he had spent his life watering a weed and starving the rose. He's ashamed, Tessa. Shame makes men do quiet things. He hasn't apologized, I said, feeling the old hurt surfacing. He doesn't know how, Margot said. He's a stubborn old goat. But watch the mail. And if you get an invite for Christmas, go. Just go. Why? Because, Margot stood up, shouldering her bag. I think you're finally going to win the science fair. She winked, turned, and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me stunned. 2 weeks later, the invitation to the Christmas Eve dinner arrived. And the Zillow listing for the Lakefront estate went pending. I looked at Julian. Margot said to go. Do you trust Margot? Julian asked. She's the only one I've ever trusted, I said. So we agreed. We would go. But we weren't going for the turkey. We were going for the verdict. The driveway was packed. Aunt Margot's rusty van was parked next to Grant's pristine Lexus. My parents' house was glowing like a beacon, every window ablaze with light. From the outside, it looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. Inside, I knew it was more like a scene from a reality TV show moments before a table flip. Julian turned off the engine. He reached across the console and took my hand. His palm was warm and dry, mine was clammy. Remember the signal, he said. If it gets too much, you touch your ear. We leave. No questions asked. I remember, I said. But I think I'm ready. I have my shield up. We walked to the front door. I didn't knock. I used my key, the one I had almost thrown away 6 months ago. The heat hit us first, smelling of cinnamon, pine, and expensive roast beef. Then came the noise. Laughter. Clinking glasses. The performative sounds of a happy family. Tessa. Julian. Mom appeared in the hallway. She was wearing a red velvet dress and pearls, her hair coiffed to perfection. She looked nervous. Her eyes darted between me and the living room. You made it. I'm so glad you made it. She reached out to hug me. I let her, but I didn't hug back. I stood stiffly, a statue in a winter coat. She pulled away, her smile faltering for a second before she plastered it back on. Everyone is in the living room. Go on in. Dad is. Dad is sitting by the fire. We walked into the lion's den. Bianca was holding court in the center of the room. She looked spectacular, I had to admit. She was wearing a shimmering silver gown that looked like it cost more than my car. She held a crystal champagne flute, gesturing wildly as she told a story to Aunt Margot, who looked bored out of her mind. When she saw me, Bianca stopped mid-sentence. The room went quiet. Well, Bianca said, her voice dripping with sugary poison. The prodigal sister returns. We didn't think you'd show up, Tessa. We thought you were too busy, finding yourself. Merry Christmas, Bianca, I said evenly. You look tired, she said, tilting her head. Are you working too hard? You know, stress causes wrinkles. You should try my dermatologist. I look like a head nurse who works for a living, I replied, taking a glass of wine from a passing tray. You look expensive. Bianca preened, taking it as a compliment. Well, tonight is a special night. Daddy said we have a big announcement. Huge. I think I finally manifested it. She looked at Grant and winked. Grant just stared into his whiskey glass. He looked thinner, gray-faced. I looked over at Dad. Franklin was sitting in his leather armchair by the fire. He looked frail. The heart attack had taken 20 pounds off his frame. But his eyes were sharp. They were locked on me. He didn't smile. He just nodded, a slow, deliberate nod of acknowledgement. I walked over to him. Hello, Dad. Tessa, he rasped. You came. Margot said I should. Margot has a big mouth, he grunted, but there was no heat in it. Sit down. Dinner is in 10 minutes. Then we settle things. The dinner was an exercise in endurance. I sat next to Aunt Margot. Bianca sat across from me, flanked by Mom and Grant. For an hour, Bianca dominated the conversation. She talked about the bad energy of her old apartment. She talked about how she needed a space that reflected her soul. She dropped hints about water, about docks, about sunsets. I just feel so connected to the water, she sighed, looking meaningfully at Dad. It's where I heal. I ate my roast beef silently. Every bite tasted like ash. I watched my parents. Mom was fluttering around Bianca, refilling her glass, laughing too hard at her jokes. Dad was silent. He barely touched his food. He kept looking at his watch. Finally, the plates were cleared. A heavy silence settled over the room. The air felt charged, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. Dad cleared his throat. He stood up, using his cane for support. "Shall we go to the living room?" he said. "It's time for the gifts." We gathered around the Christmas tree. It was a 12-foot monstrosity, laden with gold and silver ornaments. Underneath, there were dozens of boxes, but two stood out. One was a large, flat box wrapped in gold paper, sitting prominently in the front. The other was a small, plain white envelope, tucked into the branches. Bianca was practically vibrating. She sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching Grant's hand. Okay, she giggled. "Who goes first?" "You do, Bianca," Dad said. He picked up the large gold box and handed it to her. It was heavy. Bianca tore into the paper like a wild animal. She ripped the lid off. Inside was a framed architectural rendering and a set of heavy brass keys. She screamed. It was a piercing, ear-splitting shriek of joy. "The Lakefront estate," she yelled, holding up the picture. "Oh my God. Oh my God. You actually did it." She jumped up, running to hug Mom, then Dad. "I knew it. I knew you loved me. Look at the boathouse. Look at the deck." I looked at the rendering. It was impressive. A sprawling 4-bedroom house right on the water. The listing I had seen was for $550,000. "It's all yours, honey," Mom said, wiping a tear. "We closed on it last week. It's fully paid for. No mortgage." $550,000, Bianca breathed, looking at the keys. "I'm rich. I'm a homeowner." She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "Did you see, Tessa?" She waved the keys in my face. "Mom and Dad bought me the lake house. Isn't it amazing? You know, there's a little guest shed in the back. Maybe if you're nice, we'll let you and Julian stay there for a weekend. If you bring your own sheets." "Congratulations, Bianca," I said. My voice was steady. I felt nothing. No jealousy. No anger. Just a profound sense of confirmation. This was who they were. This was who she was. I squeezed Julian's hand. "We're leaving after this," I signaled with a squeeze. "It needs some work, obviously," Bianca was already critiquing it. "The kitchen is dated. I'll need another 50 grand for renovations, Dad. But we can talk about that later." She sat back down, admiring her keys, completely absorbing the oxygen in the room. "And now," Dad said, his voice cutting through Bianca's murmuring. "We have something for Tessa." Bianca snorted. "What is it? A gift card to Starbucks?" Dad didn't look at her. He reached into the tree and pulled out the plain white envelope. He walked over to where I was sitting and handed it to me with a shaking hand. "Open it," he said. "And please, read it out loud. Everyone needs to hear this." I took the envelope. It was light. Flimsy. "Go on," Mom said from the corner. She looked terrified. She was wringing her hands, looking from me to Bianca. I opened the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a rectangular slip of blue paper. A check. I pulled them out. I glanced at the check first. My breath hitched. It wasn't $50. It wasn't $500. It was made out to Tessa and Julian Reynolds. The amount was $620,000. My hand started to shake. I looked up at Dad. He nodded. "Read the letter, Tessa." The room went silent. Even Bianca stopped admiring her keys. She squinted at the check in my hand, trying to read the numbers. "Read it," Dad commanded. I unfolded the letter. It was handwritten, in Dad's blocky, jagged script. I took a deep breath, and I began to read. "Dear Tessa," I read, my voice trembling slightly before finding its strength. "We are writing this because we are cowards. For 30 years, we have failed you. We have let the noise of one child drown out the silence of the other." I heard a sharp intake of breath from Bianca. "What is this?" she whispered. I continued reading, louder this time. "When I had my heart attack in September, I learned the truth about my daughters. I lay on the floor, unable to breathe, and I watched the child I have given everything to, the cars, the weddings, the constant attention, worry about her outfit and the neighbors while I died. And I heard the child I have ignored save my life from 20 miles away. Dad." Bianca stood up, her face flushing red. "That's not fair." I was in shock. "Sit down, Bianca," Dad roared. It was a sound I had never heard him make. It shook the walls. Bianca sat down, mouth open. I looked back at the paper. "We realized that night that we have created a monster," I read. "We fed her ego and starved her heart. We taught her that she is the center of the universe, and we taught you that you are only valuable when you are serving her. We were wrong. We were negligent. We were cruel." Mom was crying now, soft, muffled sobs into her hands. "This check for $620,000 is not a gift," I read. "It is a debt payment. It is the cost of your student loans that we never helped with. It is the down payment for a house that you deserve. But more than that, it is the price of your freedom." I paused. The tears were flowing freely down my cheeks now. Julian had his arm around me, reading over my shoulder. "We bought Bianca the lake house because it is the only way we know how to keep her quiet. It is her inheritance, given early. It comes with a condition: the financial tap is now turned off forever. The business is sold. The trust is closed." I looked up. Bianca's face had gone pale. "What?" she whispered. "What do you mean, turned off?" I read the final paragraph. "Tessa, this money comes with no strings attached. You do not have to forgive us. You do not have to visit us. You do not have to answer our calls. We are giving you the means to walk away from this toxic family if you choose. We hope you don't, but we understand if you do. You are the daughter we needed, but didn't deserve. We love you. Dad and Mom." I lowered the letter. The silence in the room was absolute. The fire crackled, a sharp pop that made Grant jump. I looked at the check again. $620,000. Enough to pay off our loans. Enough to buy a beautiful house in our neighborhood with cash to spare. Enough to be free. Is this a joke? Bianca's voice broke the silence. It was low and trembling. She stood up slowly, the brass keys clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You gave her more?" she asked, her voice rising in pitch. I did the math. The lake house was $550. You gave her $620? You gave her more than me? "We gave her freedom, Bianca," Dad said calmly. "We gave you a house. You should be happy." "Happy?" Bianca screamed. She threw the keys at the Christmas tree. They hit a glass ornament, shattering it. "How can I be happy when she wins? She always wins. She's the smart one, the perfect one, the one who saves lives. And now you pay her to be better than me?" "She is better than you, Bianca," Dad said. The words hung in the air, brutal and final. "Not because she's smart. But because she's kind. And you are empty." The explosion that followed was something I will never forget. In psychology, they call it an extinction burst. When a behavior is no longer reinforced, it escalates wildly before it stops. Bianca went nuclear. She flipped the coffee table. The tray of crystal glasses crashed to the floor, sending shards flying everywhere. Grant scrambled backward, covering his face. "I hate you," she screamed at Dad. "I hate you both. You tricked me. You lured me here with a house just to humiliate me in front of her." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "And you. You manipulated them. You probably told them I let Dad die. You liar. You snake." "I didn't have to tell them anything, Bianca," I said calmly. "I folded the check and put it in my pocket. Dad heard you. Remember? He was awake." "He was delirious," she screeched. "I was traumatized. I have PTSD from that night. And this is how you treat me?" She turned to Mom. "Mom. Do something. Tell him to take the check back. She abandoned us. She killed her own baby because she was too stressed to carry it. She doesn't deserve money." The room froze. Mom stood up. She walked over to Bianca. For a second, I thought she was going to hug her. I thought the pattern would repeat. Instead, Mom slapped her. It wasn't a hard slap. It was a shocked, reflexive swat, like she was trying to wake someone up from a nightmare. "Don't you ever," Mom whispered, her voice shaking with rage, "speak about Tessa's baby like that again." Bianca touched her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You hit me?" "We are done, Bianca," Dad said. He looked exhausted, gray, but resolute. "Take your keys. Go to your lake house. That is all you will ever get from us again. No more monthly allowance. No more car payments. No more bailouts. If you destroy that house, you will be homeless. It's over." Bianca looked around the room. She looked at Grant, who refused to meet her eyes. She looked at Aunt Margot, who was sipping her wine with a satisfied smirk. She looked at me. She saw no allies. She saw no reflection of her own greatness. "Fine," she spat. She snatched the keys off the floor. "Come on, Grant. We're leaving. I never want to see these people again." She stormed out. Grant stood up slowly. He looked at Dad. "Thank you for the dinner, Franklin," he said softly. "And I'm sorry." He followed her out. The front door slammed, shaking the wreath off the hook. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive. It was the silence of a fever breaking. I stood up. I took Julian's hand. "Thank you for the check," I said to Dad. "And for the letter. Will you stay for dessert?" Mom asked tentatively. "We have pie." I looked at her. I saw an old woman, tired and regretful, trying to bridge a canyon she had spent 30 years digging. "No, Mom," I said gently. "We're going to go home. We have our own tradition." Dad nodded. "I understand. Go. Be happy, Tessa." "We will," I said. We walked out into the cold, crisp Christmas air. It started to snow. Big, fat flakes drifting down, covering the tire tracks Bianca had left in the driveway. 6 months later. I was standing in the kitchen of our new house. It wasn't a lakefront estate. It was a 4-bedroom colonial on a quiet street with big oak trees. But the deed was in our name. No mortgage. No debt. Julian was in the backyard, setting up the grill. I could hear him humming. I poured 2 glasses of lemonade and walked out to the patio. The air smelled of cut grass and charcoal. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it. It was a text from Aunt Margot. "Heard through the grapevine, Bianca is trying to sell the lake house. Apparently, property taxes are oppressive and she can't afford the upkeep. Grant moved back in with his parents. Filing for divorce. I smiled. I didn't feel happy about her failure. I just felt detached. It was a story about someone I used to know. I picked up the phone and typed back, "Hope she finds peace. We're doing great. Love you, Margot." Then I put the phone down. I walked outside to Julian. "Hey," he said, flipping a burger. "You okay?" "I'm perfect," I said. I looked around my yard. It was quiet. No drama. No screaming. No one demanding I fix them. Just the wind in the trees and the smell of dinner cooking. We had used the money to pay off our loans, buy the house, and set up a college fund for the future, because we were trying again. And this time, we weren't telling anyone until we were ready. My parents were still in my life, but on my terms. We did Sunday dinner once a month. It was polite. It was healing. But the dynamic had shifted forever. They knew, and I knew, that I didn't need them. I chose them. And that made all the difference. Some people think family is blood. It's not. Family is who respects your silence and celebrates your noise. It took me 30 years and a $620,000 check to learn that my worth wasn't a negotiation. I took a sip of lemonade and leaned back in my chair. The lake house could sink for all I cared. I was finally on solid ground. Have you ever had to walk away from your family to save yourself? Or were you the scapegoat who finally got justice? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and quiet revenge, please hit that like button, it really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.